Future Jacob here. Just thought I'd let y'all know we are redoing everything. So the motor mounts we made, redoing. The transmission crossmember getting torn out, and the front crossmember as well. In its place, we're gonna put a removable subframe in the front, solid motor mount still, but to that removable subframe so we can actually install and remove the engine fairly easily. We're switching racks from the Camaro to a Dodge Charger rack because the Charger one has two eyelets, which make fabrication miles easier. The transmission crossmember has been completely cut out and replaced with a tubular one. You'll see that in a second. That lets me adjust the height of the transmission easier, and it made fabrication much more simple and clean. Moving to the rear, we're gonna have to start designing the rear subframe, and after doing the calculations for the ride height I'm shooting for, which is roughly 4 inches, we're gonna have to have the differential kissing the bottom of the bed. So we're gonna have to raise it up, and with that being said, we'll have to notch the frame at a very minimum 3 inches. So I have a tool that's coming in the mail that's gonna make this a whole lot easier. So I've been kind of putting it off, waiting for that so I could save myself the effort. But the longer I wait, the more I'm like, man, I should really just cut this on the bandsaw. Anyways, looking into regulation for time attack, we are going to have to strengthen the body mounts that go up to the body from the frame. So they'll have to be gusseted, double plated, and I think I'm going from a single bolt to maybe a 4-bolt pattern, and that will be bolted to the roll cage from the inside. So I had to pull the body off. You guys are gonna love this shit. Check this out. There's my transmission crossmember that I created. Bent plate. This is a really popular design, I guess, and it just has another flange up to the transmission there. Easy enough. Bolts in from the bottom. Makes installation super easy. The other one was static and I could not remove it, so snaking in the engine and trans was damn near impossible. But you're probably wondering, or maybe you're not, I'm going to tell you anyways, how the hell did I get that body out of the garage? As it was sitting, I had 12 inches from the roof of the truck to the bottom of the garage door. So, so let's look. I put a 4x6, I have 6 inches to play with. That's not enough room for any type of winch. So I'm like, okay, shit, well maybe I can strap it to the ceiling and lift it up with a winch there. Well, with the CG, I would have to span in between two of the cross beams, and that was just getting super sketchy. So, and plus it would have to stay there. So I'm gonna be sitting underneath this body looming over me trying to fabricate. Fuck that, quite frankly. So, I was like, how the hell can I get this out of the garage while still being somewhat sane? So what I ended up doing, and you'll see here, once we pass my Tahoe, is doing something very strange. I thought, well, what if I lift up the body from the inside? And I remembered I have 2 scissor jacks sitting in the garage. So here we have a miniature gantry crane with 4x6s lifting the body up from the windowsill with 2 scissor jacks. Now it's on casters, so I lifted it up about 3 inches, which is all I needed to clear the frame to roll out, rolled it out, dropped it back down, and then rolled it over here. Yeah, it worked. I mean, you look at this thing, has a little bit of rock to her, but it worked. And so it's assembled by sticking this L into the cab, and then we have this side that mates to this plywood with these 2 big bolts. So it's held sturdy. Didn't have any issues. We're fine. Unconventional to say the least, but I mean, it works, so fuck it. Well, as you can probably imagine, we have quite a bit of scrap metal that we've accumulated from scrapping this car apart. The last piece is this one here. Intermediate crossmember sat right about at the end of the cab, and it dropped down way low, probably about 2 inches lower than the frame, to make clearance for the drive shaft that was going up and down, because remember, this was a solid axle vehicle. Since this is going to be relatively static, we don't need this fucking 6-inch gap. So that we're going to remake another tubular crossmember, super simple, straightforward, and get rid of some extra weight and some added ground clearance. Man, I'll tell you, plasma cutter makes my life a whole lot easier. Good shit going on. Alright, it's winter now. Have a bit of shit to do, but let's build the rear subframe. Cut out some tabs. These are going to be the frame side mounts. Show you what these look like on the frame. The front side here, and the rear side. And those are basically going to hold terminations for the tubes that go across. The rear beam is going to be straight. It's going to hold the rear mount. And then the front beam is going to have to have a very small hoop, and that will mount to both of the front mounts. So I got the passenger side tacked, as you saw. Super quick and simple way to get both sides level. Remember, the car is level because of those adjustable jack stands. Because those mounts were below the frame, I just had some of those standoffs that are going to end up being the termination mounts for the subframe. Just use those to space up off of it. Piece of aluminum extrusion across the top. I have this one in with the magnet there. And the level is level. So that's where it needs to be. Well, that's cool, and we'll start on the next one. Because I'm welding in a pocket, I can actually weld hotter because, you know, if you're doing like a butt weld or really anything that is hollow, you have a good chance that you're going to burn through it if you even weld at like the recommended amperage and voltage. Pretty much if you're doing a pocket, you can weld pretty damn hot because there's not really anywhere for that material to burn through. And I have it all tacked in, so I'm not worried about warping or anything. No one really gives a fuck. I'm not here to tell you what to do. There's plenty of other people to do that. But hey, take it as you will, right?
You know, bottom line, that's that poor girl's new car, and she can't get to school now.
We're just eyeballing this. This isn't really too critical. I just need the subframe to kind of exist. The only critical dimension really becomes the alignment of the mounting points and also where the differential sits. All right, well, here's the lower subframe. Got the diff mounts on it. I had to fully weld the tabs just because I wanted them to be welded once the differential was still bolted. Otherwise, I'd have some warping issues, and that was just going to be a pain in the ass. But yeah, I got some welding ahead of me. Let's get it done. As I reacclimate myself to filming, hopefully it'll slowly get more comprehensible. I know right now it's not, but just stick with me, okay? So we got this subframe all welded in, bolted in. It's holding the differential right now. Got the hoops for the clearance for the axles. Got the C-notches for the clearance for the axles. Oh my god, you guys didn't even see that. Yeah, so, I mean, I have this now. Freaking awesome. Yep, it's nothing to write home about, but it does the job. It's no precise bit of machinery, but it does it. The table width, from my memory, I believe, is 24 inches by 32, 33, as measured, something like that. Just big enough for me to do most everything here. There are only a very small amount of things I can't do from the scope of a car like this. So it's a great tool, and it saves time like none other. I mean, getting these tabs on the frame side done, the tabs for the differential mount, I mean, anything for that matter, it has shaved time off. Oh, and the C-notches, of course. I just printed out 4 times. I mean, that's the thing. You guys have seen, I can make my brackets. I can do it. I'll get it done. But when we're spending 3 days on one fucking bracket from having to cut 3/16 out, it's a pain in the ass, especially if it has mill scale on it. So if I can just throw it on this table right here and just cut it out, for someone who's barely even here, like tied in between school, my internship, all that stuff, it's huge. So hopefully you guys will be seeing some more progress with this a little bit more rapidly. Well, I don't remember exactly where I left off, but we're in this whole lineage of the Powertrain fabrication. So the first thing is, obviously, we got the motor and transmission fixed. So I had to figure out exactly how high I wanted the motor, and I had a pretty good idea of that off the bat. So I did this way. I built the transmission mount. That's not bolted down, but it's sitting on it, and it can pivot about that point. So the whole engine lifts up and lowers, kind of like that. So then the question is, okay, well then where does the engine sit? And because we converted to independent rear suspension, that rear differential is static. It ain't moving, so the drive shaft's going to be in one position. It's not going to be moving like a solid axle would. So with that being said, now I'm like, okay, well, you want this drive shaft to be goddamn straight relative to the transmission and the differential. So if the differential is going to be in a solid place, we can calculate where it should be. I mean, we know what the wheelbase is, so if we get the height right, we can actually put that shit in there, and that defines our drive angle, which in turn defines how high or low the engine sits. So that's what we did. I calculated, arbitrarily I said 4 inches of ride height would be nice. That might be a little high. I'm not sure yet. I know my Charger's lower than that, and I can deal with it, so we'll see. But yeah, so 4 inches of ride height, and after just calculating off of the frame how much that was, we find what the center line of the axle was. So right now, the differential is sitting pretty much just a hair lower than what 4 inches of ride height would be relative to the wheels and tires that I've chosen. So now I'm gonna go ahead and grab my cherry picker and we'll bring it in and we'll lift this engine up. I think after all is said and done, it actually needs to be lowered about this much. And the driveline angle will be dead nuts on straight into the differential. So once that's done, then we can start working on the design for the front subframe, which is gonna hold the motor mounts and also the steering rack. Fast forward a bit, thought about it, made this. There's the sheet cam, some shit. I don't know what I'm doing, man. Anyways, we got ourselves a 5 foot long galvanized pipe. Yes, I held my breath when I welded. Don't get worried on me now. Welded that to there. Got those little lines in there. Sloppy, but it gave me enough to get my pipe aligned when I was welding it. Just easy way to get everything aligned. If you haven't picked it up by now, this is gonna get mounted to the end of there. And it's gonna hover just in front of that guide pin there, and that'll let me know exactly where the transmission is. And I didn't weld it all the way around because I was under the impression that it's not perfect. So once it's mounted there, I'll spin the transmission, and if it's going woo woo woo, I'll just fucking, you know, bend it until it's straight. Integrating factory parts that were not intended for a 1991 Isuzu pickup truck becomes very difficult. Even more so when you decide you want to use them for something they weren't even intended to be used for in the beginning. It gets very confusing, as that sentence was. So let's talk about it. You're gonna have to work with me because I'm learning as I go, but our issue here is steering. When I'm making this subframe on the front, obviously it holds the motor mounts, but it also holds the steering rack. And if I'm putting the steering rack in, I need to know my Ackerman geometry, or it needs to be adjustable enough so that when it comes time to calculate the Ackerman geometry, like when I design my suspension A-arms in months in the future, the steering rack can actually go in its home and be correct. Okay, turning radius isn't a priority. Did that so I could keep myself sane for all this shit that's about to go down. So, the steering racks. If I get a steering rack off, let's say, a 2016 WRX, that has its own specific motion ratio. So if I use that rack, I have to have moment arms on my spindle be equivalent to what that was on the WRX. That would give me the same turning radius, assuming the wheelbase is the same turning radius as the WRX. So I'm sitting here editing this video, and I'm kind of realizing that this suspension geometry stuff, even just the Ackerman here, I'm starting to scratch the surface of. It's going to get a bit too complicated for me to try to explain in the video, and honestly, it's probably best that I don't. There are so many other people that know so much more about it than me that have much better explanations on it on YouTube. So if you're curious, go to them. So I'll outline what I'm doing, I'll tell you guys what I'm up to, but when it comes to explaining the suspension shit, you're just going to have to trust me, okay? So with that being said, I'll cut it here. If you guys want more consistent updates on the project, go ahead and follow the Instagram here somewhere. But in terms of what we're about to get into, we got to find a better steering rack from a used car. As I said, integrating parts is fucking impossible with random manufacturers and different little bits that you run into. So I gotta sit down, think long and hard, go through a lot of options and try to find the best possible steering rack that'll work for this application. So hopefully by the time the next video drops, I would have already figured that out. I guess we'll see. So I'll see you guys next time.